David Brewster here with another 3-for-all, and this is 3 Richie Kotzen Licks from 1993. Now, I did feature Richie in a 3-for-all lesson last year, and that kind of focused more around his old RVH video. I think it was like Rock Chops or whatever the title of it was. And that had legato, warm-ups and exercises in it. And I decided to put this one together because I did have more requests for Richie. But then also in 1993, there was an interesting kind of Kotzen, situation happening. And in the early 90s, around 91, he released Electric Joy. And that album, it's all instrumental, but it's a lot bluesier and grittier, and it kind of had a more of a relaxed, kind of sound and feel compared to his, original, couple of albums with Shrapnel Records. So his debut and Fever Dream and some of those albums are great. But when I heard Electric Joy, it was like, wait a minute, he kind of mutated and, his style changed noticeably. It had more of a bluesy and funk and soul, kind of background with some of the riffs and rhythms and solos. And he was still shredding, of course, but you could hear this bluesier, feel. And then when he recorded Native Tongue with Poison, arguably Poison's best album, I know some people really like the early, releases with CC, but Native Tongue is awesome. The songwriting, the guitar parts, the solos, everything, it's kind of a darker album too. It's not really as glammy or glitzy as the other albums from Poison. It's much darker, But this lesson's going to focus on licks from the tour that Richie was on with Poison around 93. And then he was fired from the band, and I'm going to discuss that in just a second. But he was replaced with Blue Saraceno. So if you like this lesson and you like this era of Richie's, playing, I'm going to follow this with another 3-for-all lesson, and we're going to look at Blue Saraceno when he played with Poison. So it's kind of interesting to tap into, the same band with two different guitarists and just kind of notice, some of the differences. Now, I don't want this lesson to turn into an episode of TMZ, but somewhere around 27 years ago, Richie Kotzen was fired from Poison, and there was a lot of speculation and gossip. And then later I kind of heard more of the story, and I was fascinated. I thought that is so unusual and so, noteworthy and strange. But Richie joined Poison. They released Native Tongue, recorded it. They were on tour. And then in late 93, he was fired when it was discovered that he had a secret relationship with Ricky Rocket's fiancée, Deanna, I think her name was. And there's a lesson you can learn here. And that is, if you're in a band and you're a drummer and you have a girlfriend or a fiance, don't introduce your fiance girlfriend to the new guitar player, especially if that guitar player is Richie Kotzen. The first lick from this live footage is the slippery kind of blues phrase in E7. It kind of has some jazzy flavors too, with some of the sliding, in and out of passing tones, like this. And I really like that phrase because I like those slippery, kind of half-step slides. So a little slower, we're basically playing out of E major pentatonic right here. And you can see he's kind of sliding in and out of the minor third, the major third right here. And then there's this really interesting kind of slide or a shift. And there he's kind of moving from that C sharp up to a D sharp. And then right there, you're going to move from B down to a G sharp and then grab that A. And then right here, grab, C sharp and E. Grab this F sharp and slide to G sharp. One more time, a little bit slower. And here's the footage of him playing this live back in 1993. The next idea is kind of short and sweet, but it's this really expressive flat five bending idea, and I get excited anytime I find a new bending lick or, a different way of bending strings. Something like this. And I like how it kind of plays with your ear. It almost sounds like he's dipping with like a tremolo bar, but he's playing the Telecaster with no bar, so he's doing it all, on the fretboard. And it's, short and sweet, but I like this lick. And then right there, after he grabs, this G sharp, he's going to basically bend this G up to G sharp. And then he bends F sharp up to G sharp. So I like how it's kind of toying with your ear and you're kind of hearing the same note, 3 different ways. Fretted, bent a half step, and bent a whole step. Something like that. Really cool. Now with this concert footage I found online, they're actually about 20 minutes into the concert. There is a solo that Richie does with the band, and they're just kind of vamping, drums and bass behind, Richie's solo. And it's cool. He's doing like some double stop licks. He does play a segment, behind his head for a while, which is really, pretty rad. It's like, okay, and he's just shredding, behind his head. And he throws in this lick somewhere. So this is all over D. And once again, there's some interesting bends and phrasing happening. Something like this. So one more time there. And there you can see it's really cool because we're starting, on this F note. And we're going to basically grab that, and then we're going to bend, we're going to grab F sharp and bend that up a half step. And then you're going to grab that F again and bend that up a whole step. And then you're kind of mixing, half step bends and whole step bends in the beginning like this. And then you come down. Grab that E note and bend that up a whole step. And it's almost like a Joe Walsh or Jimmy Page kind of lick right there. So when you put that together, it's really cool and expressive. And I like how it's kind of playing once again with the same note, but you're bending it 2 different ways. And here's a bonus lick from this live footage, and that's this descending E major pentatonic run. Kind of reminds me of Eric Johnson a little bit and some other players. Something like this. And then we're just doing 6s, our sextuplets. And we're doing groups of 6, so slide into that E note. And there's your 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then basically start on the B string and go down 6 more. And then start on the G and do 6 more. Slide down to that E, do kind of a, a whole step bend there on F sharp, and then finish on E again. And they're kind of doing a half and half, it's half legato, half picked, so you can kind of play around with how you're phrasing and picking that phrase. It definitely has kind of a slippery sound and that smooth kind of flowing sound from the legato. And I would practice that both ways, descend and then ascend through it too and go up 6s. Alright, that's going to wrap this look at 3 Richie Kotzen Licks from 1993, and definitely Richie's a very dynamic and expressive and soulful guitarist, but he can definitely shred too. I mean, he's notorious. I mean, he was on Shrapnel Records, so he definitely has a long history of shredding and technical guitar and string skipping and legato and tapping and all this crazy stuff. But then he's definitely kind of brought out this bluesy, kind of raw edge, especially with his solo material and, some of the other releases and appearances that he's made. He's kind of all over the place. He can rock and shred, he can play blues and this kind of soul. All right, leave some feedback and some comments, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content material. Thank you.